we can influence things in a better direction, Lord. We just pray that you would give wisdom to our leaders, Lord, and just thank you for all the freedoms that we get to enjoy in this country, and we pray that you would bless us with those freedoms in the future. Forgive us where we fail you. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Since this is start of an election season, we would like to invite everybody running for office or representing somebody running for office to kind of stand and briefly tell us who you are, and so that we can get to know you a little bit better.
Please stand. Everybody stand.
Thank you all. I'm Senator Linda Collins Smith, and I'm proud to be here today. I know of many of you, and I just have to say I brought some guests with me, so I want you to know this is some good conservatives, and that's why I'm giving them a little bit of time. I brought them from Northeast Arkansas, and it is a long ways, but we are glad to be here. So I'm proud to be here. I'm running for office, but I'm a true conservative. Don't give lip service. I vote that way, and I have a proven record, and I'm proud to be here. I wanted these folks to hear what these folks have to say tonight, and I'm here to learn as well because we have some new folks that I want to learn and listen to, and these fine folks right here I know a little bit about, so I can't wait to see what they have to say about fiscal session too. Here to learn. Thank you.
I'm Damon Edwards. I'm running for Faulkner County Judge. Conservative, two-term JP. The quorum court saw fit to appoint me to fill out the term of Angela Hill when she left, so I'm now your county assessor as well. Can't tell you how much we need conservative leadership at the county level at this time. I'm looking forward to having some of these new conservative JPs elected. We need to get behind them and push really, really hard.
I'm Terry Fiddler. Martha is somewhere right behind me. She's coming away from Little Rock. I'm the co-chair of French Hills campaign, and Martha, his wife, will be here in just a few moments if you would like to ask her some questions. But we are about to undertake our campaign, and we're certainly going to have a strong Democratic candidate from Pulaski County, which we will have to work with. But anyway, thank you for having us.
I thought you were running for office or something.
I'm running from it.
I'm Jack Settlero. I'm here representing Carol Cruz. Carol is running for the prosecutor position here in the 20th Judicial District. I've worked with Carol for over 5 years now. I'm her criminal investigator. She's conservative, she's aggressive, she believes in the rule of law, and you can't do any better than having an experienced prosecutor be the elected prosecutor. So thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Chris Kendrick and I live here in Conway, and I'm running for Justice of the Peace in District 9. I hope to bring a fiscally conservative voice to the quorum court, and I live here with my wife and 2 young children. I appreciate your vote of support. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Zach Cates. I'm running for Justice of the Peace in District 13. I'm a local product of Faulkner County. I was born and raised here in Conway. Kind of late on the scene and doing this. Chris has given me a lot of knowledge and encouragement, as long as Mr. Bob Gregory, and so they've sparked my interest, and I'm here to learn, and really looking forward to the election. I can't wait to serve Faulkner County and do whatever I can to be an asset. So I'm good to meet y'all. Hope y'all can get your support. Thank you.
I'm Jimmy Houston. I'm also running for office, JP, as well as these young men here in District 4. I'm running for re-election, which is good for me, but anyway, I want to thank you guys. If you can help me, thank you very much. All donations, political donations are welcome, especially for conservative candidates. But one of the things I wanted to point out was for you guys, we have all these political offices here, these guys running for office. They're looking to you guys to get the information and the knowledge and whatever you want to impart to these guys, including myself. We want to know what you guys say about the political issues facing this state and how you think about the things that we face as elected officials and that you face in your respective arenas. You're all superstars. We know that. I've said that. You're all superstars in your own given rights. We want to hear from you. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. David Crowder.
One more critical representation. I'm here semi-representing Bob Bailey, running for Senate in Russellville. We're helping him in the Commerce for Action, and hopefully he will prevail.
Yeah, we're going to put both mics up there. We're going to have a good night, I believe, and I've never thought of these guys as superstars, but I guess I know that they're incredibly good at what they do. But we'll go ahead and take the superstar deal. And we have ACRE who's with us, Jeremy Horpedahl, and then Ryan, and with AFP, and Brenda and Joe with Conduit. And these three organizations are groups that we have followed and worked with over the years, and like Jim said, they are incredibly good at what they do. And what they're going to do up front here for about 10 minutes is they're going to share with us their vision and their mission about their specific organizations and what they're focused on for this year, and then a little bit about what they think will happen in fiscal session. I know that's going to take up about 10 minutes each with each organization. And then that gives us about 40 minutes or so to ask a lot of questions and get a lot of answers, and how we can engage with them as we go about this year, trying to make things. Because there are three different organizations. Each one of them has their own specific vision and mission. So think about that. But they're all going in the same direction with the conservative movement. And that's what we're about. We're all about conservatives. And we want to continue to move that ball down the field. And I know it's been tough a little bit over the last few years, and we'll get into a little bit of Q&A there, because even though we have what you would consider to be a very conservative legislature, with the ruling party being the Republicans, and the administration being Republican, you would think that we'd get more conservative activities and policy in place, but just the contrary in a number of cases there. So regretfully, I had to say that. But in any case, with that, and without further ado, why don't we just go ahead and start with Jeremy. We'll just go this direction. We'll do it in alpha order, and let you guys take it away.
Thank you, David. Let me see if I really need this. Does this sound okay, or do you want to use the microphone?
Microphone, yeah.
Yes, all right. Okay, hi, I'm Jeremy Horpedahl. I teach economics at UCA, but I also do research for the Arkansas Center for Research Economics. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we do. A lot of you know about us already, so I won't spend too much time on that. But I'll try to tell you some of the issues we're working on right now. So ACRE it's part of UCA, but we really do kind of basic economic research, but always with research that has a public policy focus. So we're in some sense like academics doing research on all kinds of things, but for us it's always economics, and something that we hope will be someday picked up by someone, by maybe one of these groups, and brought so they can eventually change policy or change law in some way. So as far as what we're doing right now, David asked us to talk about the fiscal session, but sorry to say, we're not really doing that much for the fiscal session, but we are doing a lot of things right now, so let me tell you about some of those things. One of the areas that I work on, and a lot of us work on at ACRE, is tax policy. So a lot of you have seen or perhaps read some of our book. This is now getting a little old. It's almost, we put this out in November 2016, and there have even been some big changes to taxes since then. But this is our book, The Roadmap to Tax Reform. We worked with the Tax Foundation in Washington, D.C. to write this. So this is kind of the big one, and I've got some copies that's here. I actually have about 50 copies in my trunk. If you all want one and you don't have one yet, please don't be shy to take these. But this is it's about 100 pages of talking about both what Arkansas's tax system looks like now and where it might go to improve it. That's kind of what we really want to get to eventually in the book, is how to improve it. So as I think all of you know, there's this task force going on right now, and I know opinions are kind of mixed about what's even going to come out of it, but I think we have a big opportunity right now in the last meeting they fired their consultant, and now they're trying to figure out who's going to be guiding this task force from this point forward. Of course, they have internal resources through PLR and DFNA. But I do know this for a pretty good fact that we're going to have some good people that will be presenting at that committee starting at the next meeting. Maybe even some people that might have written this book. So we have some people that will actually be, I think, giving a lot of good information to that task force and hopefully to get them on the right path to actually get some good tax reform. Kind of the big things that we look at in the book are, how to get the top tax rate down to at least 5%. That's kind of our target. 7% now, get that down to 5%. Get the corporate rate down from 6.5% down to 5%. So we can be competitive with most of our neighbors, other than those that don't have an income tax, but those that do have an income tax, be competitive. And so we talk a lot about how that can be done in a fiscally conservative way that's not going to blow a hole in the budget. Of course, if there are spending cuts too, that means you can do even more tax cutting, but we have ideas in here about how you can get that rate down even without any spending cuts. Of course, more spending cuts, you get even lower. Another publication some of you may have seen, here's kind of a shorter one. Jacob Bundrick wrote this now almost 2 years ago, specifically looking at taxes, but looking at the tax breaks and subsidies. So various forms of incentives and other tax breaks for corporations either to locate here or to do certain things like expand. And he actually did present some of his research, some of his newer research just earlier this week to the subcommittee on constitutional issues that Brian King is the chair of that subcommittee. And talk about some of his new research. And he's got this really cool paper that just came out showing that one of these programs, the Quick Action Closing Fund, some of you may have heard of this. This is essentially a pool of money the legislature has given the governor to attract companies to come here that don't require any more oversight from the legislature. He can just use it whenever he thinks it's necessary. And Jacob's new paper shows that of all the money they've used so far, close to, I believe, 170 million. Here we have the one-page version of it right here, if you want the nice, slick one-page version. Jacob's research shows that on net hasn't created any jobs. It might have created a few jobs in the counties. See, there's only a few counties that got it. Here's our nice little map here. But it might have created possibly a few jobs in those counties, but also decreased employment in neighboring counties. So essentially, you're shifting jobs around and spending, almost $200 million doing it. As you can imagine, people involved with those programs don't like our research and think that there's something wrong with it. But the Jacobs research is being published in a good academic journal. So we've gone through the whole process of writing it, getting it reviewed by other academics, and it's going to be published. So, we think as, someone who's a professor, that's kind of the gold standard, that, if you go through that process and someone wants to question your research, they got to go through that process too. They can't just say, oh, you're wrong, we're right. We know it created jobs. We can point to the companies. Well, yes, you can point to the places that locate here, but you can't, you have to look at what happened to the whole economy to say it's actually effective. And Jacob's research suggests that it's not. So, I got lots of copies of this too, if you'd like to see that as well. The other issue, which is not one that I work on, but a couple people at our center do, is occupational licensing. So this is one that we do hope also in the next full session in 2019 that there will be some movement on this. For those of you that don't know anything about it, occupational licensing are licenses that are required to get to work in particular jobs. And Arkansas has over 300 of these, ranging all the way from, of course, doctors and lawyers, but all the way down to people that are, work in landscaping. So we look at both, how these requirements vary across states. For a lot of things, Arkansas licenses, none of our neighboring states license them, or they might require just a few days of on-the-job training, whereas we might require a year. We have one of these we're working on, a short one too, a one page for that. It's not quite ready, but showing that compare the national average for these jobs, we require about twice as much training before you can get any of these licenses. Meaning that Arkansas has the third highest burden for occupational licensing in the entire country. And some of our neighbors are well below the national average. All that restricts job growth. All right, if we're talking about creating jobs, here's something we can do that might create some jobs right away just by removing some government regulations. Some of those do have a health and safety aspect to them, but as they talk about in their research, this will be Tom Snyder, who's another professor at UCA, works on this. There are often better ways to achieve those health and safety objectives rather than restricting who can enter the profession. And of course, states that don't, license landscape artists, they have other ways of making sure that the health and safety, to the extent there are with that occupation, that those are taken care I would say those are the two areas that we're most working on right now. And we really are, working on things, trying to take this book and kind of get down into digestible, either one-page things or little short 10-page policy briefs so that people of all, people that are very involved in it can see what we're doing, people that just know a little about it can get the information. And we're trying to make sure that we're all ready for that when the 2019 session comes up, as well as we're keeping an eye on this task force that meets about once a month and trying to make sure that we can be giving them input, hopefully in front of the committee presenting, but also when we can kind of behind the scenes when legislators just ask us for advice sometimes. And you won't ever see that happening, but a lot of times you see people asking questions at committee meetings. Some of those were because they said, what should we ask? Well, here are these good things to ask. We try to do that too when we can. Not that we're trying to be secretive, but sometimes, legislators just want to know, we don't know anything about this. What should we ask? The consultant is preventing, the consultant is now fired. And so, what should we ask them? And so we try to, as best we can, give them our input. We say a lot of it's in the book, but of course it's a 100-page book, so we'll try to break it down for them a little bit. But give you the one sheet on it, or maybe the one paragraph on it sometime. So those are the main things we're working on. Other issues we work on, some of you guys know, we work on school choice issues. We don't know if there's going to be anything coming up in the next session on that, but if there is, we already have research ready to go to talk about some good options. Some of you know Mabudo Kalulu. He's worked on this in the past on school choice issues, and he's got a little book like this too. It's even more colorful. Jacob's is like black and red. Mabudo's is very colorful, very nice. So I didn't bring that with, but we have these. They're on all our website, or if you want copies, just contact me or anyone at ACRE, and we can get you one, or it's all on our website too. So I think that's I'm at about 10 minutes here, so I'll probably pass it off, but I look forward to your questions. And thanks for being here and being involved.
All right. I'm Ryan Norris with Americans for Prosperity. As you know, I'm pretty new, but what I think that best kind of sums up the way that I feel about this position with AFP is everyone is familiar with Captain John Paul Jones, who said, I have yet begun to fight. And that's a sentiment that everybody talks about a lot, but there's an interesting quote from him that happened before that, and it was, I do not wish to be associated with anything but a fast ship, for I intend to go into harm's way. And that's the way that I feel about AFP. We have a lot of capability and opportunity that has not been brought to the state of Arkansas. Some has existed in some lesser forms, but has not just been brought to bear. Some are brand new capabilities. The way that I would also put us into the whole social and political and policy changes are, we view it as the universities, such as Jeremy, they come up with the great research, and they explain that research in a way that think tanks, such as like our policy groups or other policy groups that exist, break that down and say, what does the research tell us to do to change in our culture, in our society, or in our economy, or whatever it may be. Then it comes down to the AFP level, which is grassroots. This is where we take it and we break it down, the messaging, to where it appeals to the everyday citizen, the person who's going to be the voter, the people that this change would affect. And then we also not only just take it there, but we break it down to the legislative level. We're a grassroots lobbying. So not only do we do lobbying in terms of getting activists to make phone calls, to do doors, to write op-eds, to represent the point of view at the legislature, but we also do direct lobbying on our own as well. We represent the common everyday person at the state capitals, or even at the federal level. We handle federal issues, we handle state issues, we also handle issues at the local level. We're currently working on our plan to get engaged in the Maumelle 2.5-cent sales tax that's coming up to increase the bond by $18 million on the 17,000 people that live in Maumelle. So we will even get involved in things like that. We want to get involved at the local level even more. We need more activists to do so. We have the capability to help. Our data is some of the best that is out there when it comes to who to call, where to put the pressure points, to get their alignment with us on the policy. We also have the capabilities of doing mailers. We're fairly well funded when it comes to getting the ideas and the policies that we would all possibly agree with out in front of people who aren't sitting in this room right now. This is enough people to enact the social change that we need to see and the political change that we need to see, but we need to amplify and magnify ourselves. Part of that has to do with education. And here tonight is Zach Kubin, who is on our C3 side with the Grassroots Leadership Academy. I operate predominantly under a C4, which is the activist grassroots. That Zach is here in the state to help us with education. So this is teaching the philosophical principles behind conservative thought, such as why is a free economy good, or why should we have a school choice, and what are those benefits. So while I'm out trying to operationalize the things that ACRE may be finding out in research, and that Zach's out there teaching on the philosophical level, I'm taking that and turning that into to messaging, into explanations to people at doors, trying to find their affinities so that we know who to call whenever the legislature gets in session and they have a bill, and we know who to reach out to that's aligned with us on those policy issues to put the pressure where it needs to be to make the change that we need to see in this state. I did have a face-to-face meeting with the governor to introduce myself. And my explanation to him was this. I said, on the areas that I can applaud you, I'll be happy to applaud you. But in the areas that I have to persuade you a different direction, I will bring to bear all of my capabilities to make that happen. I believe that we have a long way to go in Arkansas to reverse some of the damage that has been done for the last 140-something years now. We used to say 136, but I added 4 more years on it. And so the way that we see it is our capabilities and our comparative advantage is to help you amplify your voice. We have the tools to do it. We just need additional help to make that happen. We have folks outside the state that will be coming in to help, and we have folks inside the state that will be here on a permanent basis. We have 5 full-time employees. We have 3 field offices here in Little Rock, or over in Little Rock, in Jonesboro, and also in Rogers. We recently hired a new field director in Rogers, who I think will do us a wonderful job. We are currently looking for a Central Arkansas field director and a Jonesboro field director. We all, in my conversations that I had today, we have outlined a plan of 18 months that will take us past even the legislative session of next year. And all of it is designed around predominantly the tax reform, and also with some occupational licensing and school choice issues. So those are kind of the 3 main focuses that we have right now here in the state. Yeah, it sounds really familiar. It's almost as if I may have seen you this week and talked about some of this. So again, in this whole coalition partnership, we take some of the best ideas that ACRE has, because they have some of the most focus on Arkansas policy. And we attempt to create messaging to persuade folks our direction on those policies, but then also it could end up maybe, in bill text, and end up trying to find someone, maybe people in this room, who would be willing to file that bill for us and have us help them push that across the line. So all of this comes together, and I anticipate that this won't be the last time that we get together in a room and discuss kind of the plan. But there isn't a group out there that, and by group, I'm not just talking AMP, no one is representing the people of Arkansas enough once folks walk past those into the marble halls. It gets really weird. So we attempt to be that voice that keeps accountable the people that we elect. And we have a lot of fights to go around this coming session. We have new folks getting into races every day, and so the dynamics of what I'm attempting to do changes a little every day. But we need your help in making sure that we get around to all the little fires that are nipping at us. But it can be done. I'm excited about it, and I look forward to hearing more from our coalition partners and working more with the Tea Party to make all of these things that we want to have happen here in Arkansas.
Okay, I get the first 3 minutes from our presentation. And I have been here before, and we've talked a little bit about what Conduit does in its entirety. First of all, we have Conduit for Commerce, CFC policy. We've had this policy out there for half a dozen years. Much of it's very similar to the policy you'll see with these other folks. Well, most of you may know a Conduit for Action organization. That's the one that has the Facebook and that never has anything good to say about the government. But we understand that we've got a little bit of an edge to this, is what we're told. But it really is important that somebody has the, whatever you want to call it, to say what they have said and show what they have done. Because a lot of times it is different. And we don't mind saying it. Because we're not here to make friends. We're here to get our liberty back. That's it. We also have an organization called Commerce in Action. If some of you remember, a few years ago, there was an issue 3 on the ballot that kept, it was ethics reform, you remember? And the Citizens Commission to set legislative pay, and they set term limits. Who doesn't like term limits, right? Well, in that, what they did, in essence, was take all small business off the table from giving to campaigns. Big businesses will still be able to give because they know all about PACs, and they do this forever. And that's the way they've always done it. Well, small business people don't know anything about that. We're here to help facilitate and be a conduit for their voice to still matter. We also have an organization called Political Strategies that helps with strategic thinking and planning for campaigns and various things like AFP would do. And we have Conduit News. Anybody ever heard of Paul Harrell? No, that's Conduit News.
Every morning.
He's on 6 to 8 now. He used to be on 4 to 6. Now he's on 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. and he's in Little Rock. Martha, you've heard him, right? 96.5. Yeah, 96.5 The Answer. Same one Ellsworth's on. We put a lot of material out there as well. He is on Facebook. I don't know where that timer started. Okay, 11. So, okay. Conduit for Action, we have, we started out saying, here's what the legislators have said in their campaigns, and here's what they're doing. We do a scorecard every year, and it is the scorecard. Don't pay any attention to anybody else's. I mean,
except AFPs.
No, take it for what it's worth. 5 bills.
Even Mr. Hendricks?
Yeah, even Mr. Hendricks. He scores his own. Yeah, but really, like even the Conservative Union puts out a scorecard. Well, they don't know what these people do down here in Little Rock and what they say. Well, we have a guy, Josh Waters. Anybody heard of Josh? Anybody met Josh? Josh is down at the Capitol during the legislative session. He's down there at the Fiscal Session. He keeps track of what they say. We record a lot of it, and we can back up everything we say, footnotes, or video or audio, and these folks don't like it. And these people call themselves conservatives, a lot of them. So we know who they are, and we're the bane of their existence. But we're here for liberty. Same thing you guys are here for.
So we've decided that liberty looks like smaller government. And we want to see how we can help make it smaller. And in doing that, you're not going to know it unless you can measurably see the reduction. So that's what we're about. That's our mission. And in that, you wanted to know what's going on in the next 12 months. Well, I just happened to bring our one-page 27-month plan right there. You can have a copy of it if you like. It's real easy. But I'm going to tell you about the next 12 months. So right off, February 13th is a primary election, a special election, Senate District 16, Senate District 29, closest to you guys, Cabot, and Russellville right up the road. How many of you are involved in those races? Raise your hand if you're helping in one of those races.
Shame.
All right, go get their names. Go get their names. We're going to get some volunteers. They need you guys, and this is quite a race for smaller government with these Senate districts. You can ask Linda how important they are. Right now, we're short 3 senators, and they're going to need 75% of 35, which is 27 votes, to fund the Medicaid expansion bill for one, which will come up in week number 3 for February. That'll start. So that's the fiscal session. So we're focused on the primaries, and then of course we know that the filing period starts the 22nd of February through March 1st. We'll know who are going to be our next candidates. And I hope that everyone has a race that you're going to get involved in. And we see that there are, I would say, a really nice group of Democrats that appear to be filing across state House and Senate races. So we're going to have a kind of a different conversation, I would say, than we've had with other Democrat candidates. So you guys get ready. Primaries are really where it's at in Arkansas right now. But there'll be a few races that the Democrats will give us a run for the money. All right, so budget focus on the fiscal session coming up in February, March. So look for maybe a freeze bill for the Medicaid expansion enrollment. Freeze the enrollment's one way to kind of shut it down. Another may be a change from the great insurance idea to fee-for-service. You'll see something like that. Now, those are two things that this organization, Conduit, will support. And I would hope that you'll get engaged enough, you'll know what's going on. And you guys, I think that we all heard everyone say that Medicaid expansion was a great idea. Arkansas needed it for the budget, for the money. We can't survive without it. Now, how are we going to keep the holes patched in our roads because we have to pay for Medicaid expansion? So that brings you to, the budget, how we're going to get past that. Expect a special session if they don't have enough votes for the 27 to fund Medicaid expansion. Hopefully, we will not have another valiant scheme, according to John Brumman. He thought that's what the line item veto scheme was this week. He wrote a nice op-ed about that. All right, so you can tell the difference in when Joe and I speak and these guys. We have an edge. I wanted to tell you, I see a difference in us and them. For one, they're nice and kind. We have nice and kind. Josh Waters, right, Joe?
That's Josh's job.
Yeah, that's Josh's job. But Joe and I are not blessed with education as our industry or national organization as our backers. We have jobs, full-time jobs, that do not include this. We're in the heart of living out what goes on in Little Rock. And we need you guys to always help us because we're trying to turn this over to the next generation. And you're fortunate enough to have a lot of JP candidates, very proud of you. Those are the guys who are going to come behind, and they need to hurry up and come along quicker, don't they? But, we're trying to do our work so that it'll last into the next generation. And so as we do that and we teach about the budget session, and, as Joe said, we'll do scorecards. They'll come out from the fiscal session as well. And those scorecards are very effective just to find out if what they said they would do, they did. And, a lot of these measures are defense. The primaries, when you work in a campaign, that's offense. Tax reform is coming up, as Jeremy mentioned, a very big deal. You watched all of those hearings, and when you see them say the military tax exemption bill was revenue neutral, and you see the state employees say, yes, sir, it was, Senator Hendren, and you read the bill, the only way you can conclude that that is a truth is if you cannot read and do not do math, because it was not revenue neutral. Okay, that kind of thing that we're up against, you've got to understand math and how it works. Then you can understand how you can help your legislator. All right, but that's defense. So tax reform, as you get ready, you need to study Jeremy's materials. Anybody that puts out materials, we have certainly stated our position, and whether you agree with it or not, I'm a tax lawyer, I live it out, and when I hear things like the governor's whatever fund we want to call fund of the day and how much it did not create jobs, there's only one way to create jobs, and that's get government out of our way and let our people be less burdened by taxes or whatever. So that's what we do. Tort reform election, you'll see the tort reform bill on the ballot. We'll see that we'll prepare for the fiscal session in the next 12 months because it'll, the general session because it'll be on us. And we are going to focus on, part of our goal is to say, where's our money going? We've been doing all of this fine talk for ever how many years we've been doing this, but really, where is the money? So Conduit is going to really make a shift in what we're doing. People may not be able to see it, but we're going to study where the money goes. a lot of the bond authorities, places that aren't fun, they're not sexy to look, we're going to study that. So we'll have more material to share with you this time next year about that research. And then we're really important that we create a stronger financial support donor base. We need all you guys to help us. And if you like Paul's show, advertise, sponsor, whatever. And we look forward to answering your questions. Thank you, Dave.
All right. That's loud, isn't it? I'm sorry. I can't hear a thing over here in this area. No, Joe, that was the first time you actually did 3 minutes, 5 seconds. That was amazing.
And my language was...
It was clean. I mean, was it fairly clean? It was, okay. But I appreciate that. And I'm glad you guys are here, and I'm glad we're talking about working together in a coalition and stuff like this. This is great. It's been one of my goals for years is to try and coalesce the conservative movement groups like these here, because these are the good groups, very good groups, and everybody trying to work in the same direction together. And it's good to hear that there's some talk along that lines. I do have a question right out of the chute, and that is this task force or farce or whatever y'all want to call it that's been looking at the tax farce. What do you think, and this is just a general response here, what do y'all think is going to come out of this? And before y'all take off on that, have they asked you, Jeremy, to present the Green Book and listen to what you guys, because that is loaded with opportunity for Arkansas.
They have not asked us. I found now.
There you go.
We have not yet presented, but at the March and April meetings, most likely someone will be presenting this book. So we will be, now that they've got the consultant out of the way, we can now tell them what we think. So hopefully we'll finally get down to business.
I guess your message will be quite different than what they had hired somebody to do.
Well, I mean, the consultant so far has been kind of just giving them information about what the current tax system is and how it compares to other states, which is what we already wrote on our book. And they were, the consultants are from out of state, and they just came in there trying to learn it as they were here. We spent 6 months doing that, and I think you can see why they were let go. They weren't really giving them any recommendations or anything new. So hopefully now, time's almost running out for this task force, so hopefully we can start to get some recommendations. So we're optimistic about that.
That's good. I think the report's due out this fall.
September.
Yeah. Others of you? Yeah.
Well, I can tell you what I expect out of this task force. That is a recommendation for an internet tax and an additional tax for the highways. They'll come up with some kind of a tax for the highways. That's just simply what they're going to do. Because as they've said clearly, we don't have a spending problem, we've got a revenue problem. I mean, I don't know how much clearer they can make what they intend to do to us. If you just listen to them, they'll tell you what they're going to do. Now, another thing that context and watching this over time will teach you is they have created this tort reform bill such that the legislature now will take the rulemaking authority away from the judicial branch. So the legislature now will be making rules of proceedings in court. Now these rocket scientists that are going to be doing this, they're supposed to be fiscal experts and handle our money. That's what they're hired for, right? The legislature. Well, they got to hire a consultant for that. So how the hell are they going to do anything with court proceedings? They're going to hire another expert? No, they're going to do what the highest bidder tells them to do. I hate to be pessimistic, but I've seen it, and that's exactly what they're going to do. If they cut one dime of tax, realistically, I'll leave the state.
Ryan, what do you think about it?
Test. Can you hear me all right?
There we go.
on the task force, we are actually filming it, and we've put January's up on our Facebook page if you'd like to go in and view it. We put it all there. The previous weeks, we have, actually it's being put together right now by our communications department, and we'll have it on Facebook soon to where you can watch it as well and hear what they're talking about regarding the federal tax and how it's going to impact the state. And then, of course, the internet tax was this past week. Our position on the internet tax is definitely that it would be unconstitutional right now, that we are very much in line with Quill versus North Dakota, that you just can't do this. And I actually said that specifically to the governor when I had my meeting. He asked, what's my position on sales tax, or on the internet sales tax, and I said, well, it's unconstitutional until the Supreme Court hears it and reverses their current decision. So it's interesting to see that it came up, and I haven't even looked at all of what was said, but we're watching that closely, because if they're trying to circumvent the U.S. Constitution for the sake of a revenue issue that they believe they have, we definitely will be pointing that out with every available asset that we have to say, you know, you can't go this route. So that's that piece. Overall, the opinion that I have of the task force is that it is sound and fury, signifying really nothing. It will be used to add credibility to the decision that I think has already been made, in my opinion. I believe we should pay attention. I still think that we need to pay attention, and we need to capture as much of the conversation as possible so that we can bring those pieces out at critical times and put pressure on these folks. I won't say, you know, I like collaboration as much as possible, but every now and then you have to coerce somebody with a stick, as you know, because you run out of carrots. So we are prepared to do that. I think that there will be some kind of income tax cut and corporate cut. However, I know there will be no corresponding spending cuts that are put forward. And so if we think along those lines, I mean, I mentioned that. The governor again asked me, what do you think a policy win would be? I said, cut income taxes, broaden the base of sales taxes, and then you have to decrease spending. It's the same model that's been used by North Carolina, and they've added $5+ billion worth of economic growth in their state.
But when the governor picked himself up off the floor after you said cut spending,
yeah,
what did he say?
He said, well, we aren't cutting spending, but we are in improving efficiencies. We've cut headcount. I said, well, sir, the thing about that is there isn't a citizen in Arkansas that believes Arkansas government is running at 100% efficiency, and that there are areas in which we can decrease the burden on the taxpayer, not just in the taxes, but in what the government's required to run. Arkansas has one of the highest income taxes. We have one of the highest corporate taxes. We also have the highest, in our region, the highest per capita spending on our citizens. So there's something just not quite adding up when you start doing math. And it makes you think, again, where is the money going? So whereas our piece of the battlefield will be well defined, we know that coalition partners will be looking at their piece of the battlefield. And the areas that we can collaborate, we definitely will be collaborating. So that's my 2 cents on the task force.
Thank you.
If I might just add, I think that the goal will be to increase revenues and call it a tax cut. Now, the wording is hard often to understand from regular voters. And so you need to pay attention to all of these groups and everything that they say. And then if you know anyone on the task force, you need to call and ask what their input is. And I've done that. And the message that I've gotten back is, well, I'm not really involved in what's being done and prepared. These are members of the task force telling me this. I said, well, who would that be? All of them had said one person, Jim Hendrick. So if you want to call Jim, that might be the money, more bang for your buck. But to broaden the tax base, not to be argumentative, but broaden the tax base is a tax increase. The revenues will go up when you do that. Now, that's often the recommendation, but it's always accompanied by a significant tax cut. And so you just do the math and be ready. Is this a tax increase? With a tax, is this a revenue increase called a tax cut? That's your question. Okay, thank you.
Oh, by the way, Jim Hendren is a fighter pilot.
Okay, let me ask you this. Does anybody, and I'll let y'all, I'm going to just say this thing. The current administration says, does anybody believe any of this? Name one thing you believe. They've cut the budget.
No.
Does anybody believe?
Well, wait, what do you mean by cut the budget?
Cut the total budget.
See, that's assumed.
The total budget. Has spending been cut?
No.
Does anybody believe the spending's been cut? No. How about the size of government? Do you think the size of government has been reduced?
No.
Does anybody believe that they haven't raised taxes?
No.
I mean, they keep, okay. I just wanted to know if I was in the right crowd here, okay? Because that's the mantra of this administration.
Well, I think what's important there as well to add to that is we're 75% Republican. In the legislature, both houses, and in every constitutional office.
Yeah, exactly. Questions about the floor? Jim?
I have a question about, talking about the battlefield. One of the issues and the concerns that I have in my short time in politics has been really eye-opening to me about the open primaries. And I would like to ask you guys what your opinion is about open primaries and one party being able to affect the outcome of an election based on open primaries.
It's pretty tough when you know that, that's what I was trying to get across to a potential candidate tonight. I said, now, in your district, I was talking about here in Conway, and I said, is there an election where you have two Democrats running in the primary so that the Democrats just have to go vote rather than voting in the Republican primary? And the guy did not understand really what I was talking about. We've done a poor job educating our public. They might be interested in closed primaries if they understood what's really happening. And for example, in the governor's race, a lot of people may like Jan Morgan and, Republicans like her. And I said, yeah, well, Democrats like ACRE. And so they're going to vote in the primary for ACRE is a strong potential because there are two Democrats are not running in the primary. So they don't have to, they can vote for the Democrat in the general. So, I think it's a good idea to educate our public about that and start having that conversation for closed primaries. Or maybe we could do a jungle primary like they do in Louisiana. And that is bizarre.
Oh, yeah. Isn't that where they just all run at the same time and the top two get to go into a runoff?
Yeah, it's wild.
Be interesting. Questions? Okay, since you're not going to ask questions, how many fiscal conservatives do you guys believe we have in our legislature?
You got your list?
I believe we have 8 in the Senate and about 20 in the House.
Sometimes 26.
Depending on the issue and who's up for re-election.
So that's right around 20% in both houses.
That's right.
That's 75%.
So
About a
you
third
need
of the
26%, right? You need 26%. Terry?
How many in the Senate?
Or Doctor?
8. 8 true ones.
At one time, there was 11.
Yeah,
But then they got peeled off one at a time, with assorted things.
I do have a question.
Okay.
I'm proud to see we have a new director of AFP. Thank you for being here. I will say I liked what you had to say. I'm a true conservative, always at the top of all of those conservative lists. Still there. So I try to keep my word to my constituents when I campaign. It's nice to hear them say that I keep my word. But one of the things I will ask AFP, since we haven't had an opportunity really to visit, is this. Is Obamacare private option Medicaid expansion Arkansas works negative in the sight of AFP with the new director? I have to ask you that. I think everyone here might like to know that. I know you're kind of picking on the spot. I'd kind of like to know that.
Right.
I mean, it's negative to me, we're putting more people on welfare.
Right.
And as a person who wanted to see more people in Arkansas go to work and become financially more able to help people in Arkansas stay in Arkansas to work instead of leaving to work somewhere else, I'd like to know your thoughts and how you feel, and will you be grading people that vote for or against?
So the easy answer to that is that AFP believes that government should not be in healthcare, period.
Exactly.
The very first question that I had from the media was, how did I feel about the work requirement and the federal poverty level being moved from 138 to 100, and if those were taken care of, would we be okay with Arkansas Works? And the comment that I made was we would take that as an incremental win, but it is our policy position that government should not be in healthcare, period.
And so my question specifically as a legislator who has kept my word. Oh, thank you. As a legislator who has kept her word to the constituents, and that is my belief, is that we put more people on welfare. It's costing people more and more, those that are actually work to pay for their health care, their cost have went up. For all those reasons we didn't like it, they're still the same. And nothing's changed about that, actually.
That's right.
Not one single thing has changed. I guess I'm asking AFP stand specifically as a legislator who goes out and who keeps her word and has to go back and look those people in the eye over and over and over again. Just because the national folks didn't keep their word doesn't mean that I've not kept mine. How does AFP, what is their stand in Arkansas now? They have a new director. Can you tell me what you're going to say to Linda, the legislator? Hey, you don't like this. You don't want you to vote for it because it's still not good policy. I know what they asked you. I know what the media asked you. What are you going to tell me? What are you going to say to the legislator? Linda, we really don't like this policy. It still hasn't changed. Or are you going to say, hey, we'll take an incremental vote.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Well, as hard a line as we can get, we will take that and we'll back that. You also have to take into consideration the political calculus of whether it's going to happen or not. We initially started off with, like 11, and it got peeled back to 8 in the Senate bill on funding for Medicaid expansion. And so for us, it's always going to be, have we moved the needle? We want it to be way out here, but the Overton window, as we all talk about, has been moved so far that even an incremental move of the window back to the right is better than it being moved to the left or staying in the middle. Our policy is going to always be whatever the best policy is to push it as far right as possible. That's what we're going to go for. But again, I don't get to write the legislation. I don't get to vote on the legislation. And if at the end of the day, the legislature gives us the best option is an incremental win, that's what we're going to have to support.
And so if my policy is presented and my policy is repeal, and those legislators do not vote for the repeal.
Right.
It's not very favorable in the sight of AFP.
We have two options that we use. We have accountability efforts, which is where we show folks in a district, particularly if they're running for office potentially again, people you need to know that they did not vote the way you wanted them to vote on the area of Medicaid or on taxes or on what those are. So there is accountability efforts. Then there's also thank you efforts for those that have voted the way AFP has the policy aligned with us. There needs to be more, and this was actually a conversation I had today, of making sure that those who have taken the hard votes are properly thanked in a public way, and that resources that AFP has in place to help them with their policy and help move their policy forward is always available to them in a very substantial way.
Well, I appreciate you because I kind of put you on the spot being new as a new director and you've done that publicly. I have to do that publicly.
Yeah.
And I thank you for doing that because these folks here, especially this group right here in Central Arkansas, has really worked hard to make sure conservatives are elected. This is one of the strongest groups out there that fights hard to make sure that we are. And so I thank you for publicly answering those questions even when they're tough. And I'll continue to make tough votes. Yes.
Linda, specifically Linda, took a big hit from the governor personally in her district because of her vote to end Medicaid expansion that she promised her voters she would do. So thank you.
Thank y'all. Thank you very much, everyone.
Can I get a follow-up question?
Yes, yes.
Is this working? Follow-up question to what Linda said, and maybe I'm just a little slow. AFP does a scorecard, correct?
Yes.
I've looked at it.
Yes.
And you're going to continue doing scorecards?
Yes.
Okay, now, so those are short answer questions. Linda introduces legislation to end Arkansas Works.
Mhm.
7 senators vote with her.
Mhm.
You're going to grade them according to that vote, correct?
Yes.
And all the others.
Yes.
There is another bill that's put forward that moves the Overton window this far.
Mhm.
Linda, who is a good conservative, says, you know what, I can't vote for that because my bill has been out here, and that's not what my bill was. Now, are you going to grade Linda because she didn't vote to move that Overton window this far? Because that's happened in the past.
Right. Well, the nature of the scorecards for us is something that I am attempting to rework because of a couple of issues. One, I think that a handful of votes isn't enough votes to count.
That's right. That's right.
That's personally my opinion. And as I am the state director, it's opinion that actually carries a lot of weight. The next piece is that I do not believe a simplistic A, B, C, D, F scenario is also very telling of how someone has supported AFP-aligned causes. I am currently in discussion with my headquarters to change the way we do our scoring from the letter grades to more of an affinity model, to whoever has the higher affinities or the lower affinities towards liberty. That's the way I'm modeling it. I plan on sending out a letter because, there were legislators came to me and they said, well, if we knew that you were going to be scoring D6, we would have, and I said, and I thought about it. They would have voted differently. Well,
No, they wouldn't, trust me.
that's true.
We told them ahead of time.
I would like to think.
But they would love to say that. I mean,
So this actually brings me to a point that I would like to bring out, that AFB has a framework in which we believe a legislator and just a common everyday citizen should think in terms of deciding whether a decision of policy skews towards liberty or towards statism and centralized government. The framework has, what are all the frameworks, Zach? What are the 5? Hey, Zach. Zach Cuban, Agent Zach Cuban.
Hello, Zach.
So we have vision, we have culture, we have individual rights, we have free speech and market signals, and then incentives. And underneath these are 5 dimensions of free societies. That if you have these dimensions, and that people are being respected, that there's mutual, spontaneous order, et cetera, et cetera. So this said, we're working on educating our legislators not to just make votes, but to think in terms of, does this vote move us towards or away from liberty? So what I would like to do in my letter that I want to have before the next legislative session is give them, here's what good policy looks like. This is the elements that it's going to have. Surprise. We're not telling you which ones it's going to be, but we're going to score a lot more than we did before. We may collaborate a little bit on that to kind of make that line up. So that, the conservative faction of the state is speaking in a, at least humming the same tune. But yeah, the scorecard situation is needing a total remodel, and I'm working on that. So
Okay.
I don't want to hurt your feelings.
I'm going to jump to a new topic. Jeremy, in the last session, general session, I believe it was, we did not have any GIF funds. Sort of, kind of. And then all those dollars were given over to the governor's office. So all the GIF went to the governor along with all the other money that he had originally had. And we you've mentioned that your policy information says all those dollars are wasted dollars. In fact, I've read it and I believe it with all my heart. Is there any kind of money like that that you would think would be good to have available in the event something occurs? And I know I'm not labeling the dollars very well, but
So you mean like talking about a rainy day fund, is that what you're talking about?
something like that, maybe. I don't know, maybe. Is there any of those? Is any of those kind of funds, GIF, rainy day, quick action, etc., are any of those kinds of dollars good in the scope of government to have around the scope of government?
No.
It's hard to say yes. I think, especially in Arkansas, we have an important budget tool called the Revenue Stabilization Act. It means that we don't necessarily need a rainy day fund. So I think all those funds could be better used to pay for tax cuts. I think that we have a paper we're actually working on Arkansas's rainy day fund, or the lack of, and how that compares to other states, and what that might mean next time there's a recession, because there's going to be a recession soon. If anyone didn't know, it's been 8 years since the last recession ended, so we're kind of due for one. So we are, think about that. I think that with this budget tool that we have, there's much less of a need for it here. So when the funds go and don't go to GIF, they end up going somewhere else, right? So we would like that those are in some way returned to taxpayers, whether that's through permanent tax cuts, whether that's through some sort of budget tool that would use it to just return to taxpayers. Some states have policies like that. So we're working on research on that too. For those that are familiar with it, these are called tax expenditure limits, which limit the amount that government spending can increase every year. Colorado has one of the most famous ones. And so we're working on research on that too right now to try to see what would be the options. Always when we put out policy information like this book, we have just a lot of options, right? We're not saying you must do this or here's the best way. We say here's a good option, here's a really good option, here's something that's kind of a no-brainer, then why aren't we just doing this? So as far as funds like that, I think that's what we would say are the best uses of that. And we're trying to produce some research on that so we can have that ready for the next session too. Again, our research, we always do it not knowing if anything is going to come up in this session. Sometimes it's just, in case someone talks about it. So I wrote a paper on special elections for sales taxes. And I'd worked on this for over a year, and then all of a sudden the bill came up. And we had nothing to do with it. The bill just came up, and they said, hey, will you come testify on this? And we just had the research ready. So we're always trying to think ahead like that too on issues that might come up that we think are important.
Very good. I really like the idea of tax cuts. Those sound good. Yes, sir.
On this choice of schools you mentioned, when I first come here, I was in Jacksonville. And at one time, I think it was the mid-'80s, that Pulaski County Special School District had talked about busing the kids to Little Rock. A lot of people complained about that, and they said they were going to do it. So all the parents sold their house and moved to Canton. So you do have a choice. Sometimes you got to speak out, and sometimes you have to take action. And I also talked to two principals at senior highs, and they said if every kid come to school carrying a Bible, they would not send them home. Because some people say, we're going to send you home, you come with a Bible. They said, no, they ain't going to do that. And you want to make a comment about it?
Go ahead, continue.
Okay, and now this ACRE, I was with ACRE for a while. And the doctor had spotted a black thing going down my throat. He suspected it was cancer. And he told us people to get right on it. And it took me 3 months to get an appointment with a specialist. And I almost got up on their desk and started jumping up and down on them because, you know, hey, they're talking about my life. But then I got to looking in the directory, and the one here in Conway that had 8 doctors listed. Well, there's only one in there. They got 8 other locations, and all 8 doctors are listed at all 8 locations. So, and when I was in there that last time, there about 4 or 5 people got mad and walked out because they couldn't get no service.
Yeah, that's, you know, frustrating when you think that we spend all this money on healthcare. It's, you know, it's the largest part of both the federal and now state budgets, but still people are having to wait for services. Something, and the money's there, but service doesn't seem to be improving. And you know, these guys know more about the healthcare issues. I don't work on that. But on the school choice issue, I think, you know, what we're looking at there, we talk about lots of different options to just increase choice for families, right? Where they may not even have to drive to another district to have more options, and looking at ways. We do have, you know, open enrollment to some extent in Arkansas school districts, but it's very limited. There's a cap on how many can move between districts, and our research tries to look at other ways to expand that so that you know, people have more chances to improve their kids' education without having to pick up and move and buy a new house and uproot yourself. So if anybody else wants to comment on the healthcare aspect, but more choice in healthcare I think would be good too.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Dave, I have a question on school choice. Why is there a cap on movement of students from one district to another?
Well, I'd say you might have in 5,000 students in this town and 5,000 in this town or school, and all 10,000 want to go to this school. You know, they can't have that certainly.
But who is saying yes or no about the cap? Who's saying yes or no about the movement of the kids from one school to another?
School district.
I'm not going to answer that. I'm going to tell you that the legislator who brought a school choice bill this last time now has an opponent in the Republican primary. You know, just to put reality to. So everyone doesn't like the idea of school choice. So you might want to tell him about the cap and say we wish Brenda hadn't brought up a sore subject.
I don't know why the cap is there. I think it was one of those things where at that point that was the best you could get. Before the cap was 0, no one can move, and they got the cap to 3%, and sometimes get what you can get, right?
It's all money. You give up money when somebody wants.
Of course, yeah.
Now, my grandchildren have experienced this. You know, not bad schools, but choice of 2 schools, and there's the 3% cap, of course, then there's a racial element to it. Yeah, and you can't have, like I said, all 10,000 people in 2 schools go to one school because their infrastructure wouldn't support it. So they can't, you know, they can't set themselves up for a deal like that. So it does make a little bit of sense that all of them can't rush over there, because in some school systems, they would.
But that's free market.
Well, that's nothing
This
to
is
do
not
with,
that's
we're not talking about free market.
We're talking about free market capitalism, though, being able to go to the best schools and educate my kids at the best schools where they become productive citizens.
That's school choice.
And if the public would seize the ground that it's their responsibility to pay for education, because we don't want a bunch of morons running around us. But that's the argument.
We already
I
got
personally, I'm paying for a hell of a lot of people going to school. I don't have to go to school. But if you do that, you should be able to break the monopoly. I mean, I don't know where it was said that the government has anything to do with school and educating children. I didn't read that in the Constitution. But if we've ceded that ground, at least take the money that you're confiscating from the people, because we don't want morons running around, and give it to anybody who's going to school and let them decide where to go to school. I mean, that's real simple. But that upsets a lot of apple carts.
If the money followed the students instead of following the school district, that would happen.
That's right, but you've got teachers unions, you've got the whole educational industrial complex It's way worse than the military.
So the
Okay,
question
got it,
is
got it.
it about education or is it about the money?
It's about the money. Got a question over here?
I heard about that, and then I don't want to talk more about school choice, but I did hear that the man that they brought in to talk about school choice really said, I would really like for it to be called parent choice rather than school choice. But he said I lost that battle a while back. I think each person, each panelist here tonight is such a jewel. In UCA we have, it's just amazing to me that we have such a great group at UCA that we do, and I don't think y'all are under an umbrella of UCA, but that's where is that?
We're part of UCA. We have our own funding, so we don't have any university or taxpayer funding
Right.
for us. But we're part of UCA because we take that same approach to how they do research, and professors that work for UCA, we also pay them sometimes to do research. So we like to be a part of it, but our funding is separate.
Okay, well, I think it's great that we have this resource right here in central Arkansas. And then, of course, America's Prosperity has been here for several years. They have helped many people and been very informative and helped at the grassroots. A lot of us learned a lot of stuff about grassroots efforts from AFP. And then, of course, I'm a little more abrupt. I sort of like the Conduit way of talking and that. So it's all right with me. But
You can use the internet to do that, Janet. If
I
you
know.
Social media. You should learn Twitter and social media.
Yeah. And there's some other organizations in Arkansas that we're really blessed to have that are very informative. The thing I think I heard a commonality here: tax reform, school choice, and occupational licensing. Something all of you all are interested in working with. We have legislators here in our area. I guess I'm interested in and I'd like an answer, just a quick one from each one. How often do you hear from legislators that represent us here, state legislators, on the different issues? And that would be Rayford, Meeks, Steve McGee, Missy Thomas. You don't have to go through every one of them, just generally speaking, do you get questions from any of the people that represent us here?
We're excommunicated from all the people in this area.
We hear from Jason Rayford fairly often, how much he hates us, and what liars we are, and despicable, and unknown the adjectives.
You're not alone.
Very, very strange. And then we have certainly supported the Meeks brothers with their votes. I don't think they like that fact, honestly. I'm just being honest. Did you say Missy Urban or
She is a teensy
Yeah,
car.
and of course.
Go for
And Doug House.
Missy,
Doug House.
Yeah.
and Doug.
Doug House.
Oh, okay, yeah, well,
David Sanders.
yeah. We have.
What is wrong with you people?
I know.
So, we might ought to get together afterward.
Well, we hear a lot from some northeast Arkansas, some north central Arkansas, great legislators up there all over that place. A few in northwest Arkansas that still talk to us. But we do hear from time to time, and they do want to know what we think about things. But I think they're more interested now because we have determined that the biggest thing that affects the Overton window is whether you can get them elected or unelected. That's all they care about.
And they really have become, we were really very close to most of our Republican legislators in 2014. We helped a lot of them get elected. And it became, the crisis developed once they did not vote as they promised when they ran. And we still remember it, and we haven't changed, and we bring that up. And so there lies the rub.
As for me, being new, I'm in a cool down period on my lobbying, so there's some things that I can and cannot do. Meeting with legislators, I can on a face-to-face kind of basis, but I can't ask them to necessarily do anything. I do have it lined out to meet just about everybody coming up through the fiscal session. We have plans to start identifying, you can have a party majority without a policy majority. So I am currently going through the criteria of what a policy majority would be and who would represent that. And then in the areas that we can influence their decisions, and particularly the primaries are the best way of doing that. We don't get involved directly in primaries, but we do like to remind folks on the policy positions that certain people have, both in a thank you possibly, or again in an accountability effort. I plan on being very involved in communicating with all of our legislators, particularly the leadership. There's some already just by nature of being AFP or dodging me, and I'm just keep on knocking on that door, and we have other methods of attempting to get communication with them. But again, the way that I view AFP is that we are the lobbyist for the everyday person. We're the citizens' lobbyist. I asked someone recently, I said, who else is going to be out there actively engaged in cutting income taxes for everyday citizens? And they said, no one is going to be out there engaged in this at the level that you plan to get engaged.
ACE is.
Well, yeah. Because it's going to be special interests that are there protecting, their exemptions, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the way we try to position ourselves, is that we are the lobbyist for the conservatively aligned individuals. So I will be making that point very clear to every single person that I meet, and I exchange information with them. They can contact me at any time, but they also need to plan to hear from us as well.
May I say one more thing about elections? As far as elections go, I think if you really wanted to sum up what Conduit is regarding elections, as long as the people get good, truthful information, we're good with how they vote. Our goal is to make sure they understand the issues better, they can process them, and then when they vote with information and knowledge, nothing could be better than that. It doesn't matter if it's for someone we would support.
That's a position that the Faulkner County Tea Party take, to educate and inform and try to advance, and let people know. And we think that if that's the case, people will make an educated decision on what best to do.
So taxed enough already? I mean, you guys have it going on. Thank you very much for keeping the group together, because not many groups have stayed.
Well, thank you. Well, my next question sort of leads down that direction.
Okay. ACRE didn't answer.
No, I had
ACRE didn't answer.
Oh, thank you. I'd like to go ahead. We can't interrupt. No.
We don't hear from legislators very much. We know there are a couple legislators who really do like our book and are asking us questions about it a lot, just in general and in relation to the task force. I only know of one legislator who really, really hates me. He really does. But just because I have said his exemption should go away. But other than that, I think we generally had pretty friendly relationships. We don't talk to people a lot. So.
Which nephew was it?
It was not a nephew.
Okay.
It was someone who wants to live in Texas, but.
Oh, him. He's in a lot of trouble.
Oh. We have to vote publicly. It's okay. Name names. We're okay. I have to cast my vote. Name names. But I was going to say, I want to appreciate you guys because you sit here and you take these questions. But I want to say to Conduit because some people say, well, they like you. I was told that because Paul Harrell likes me. I said, well, it's only because I vote conservative because you vote the way I vote, because I've kept my word as a conservative legislator, and I try to, and I say that with all my imperfections, and I have them, but I try hard. And so that's, if I see that I vote wrong or I've made a mistake, I sure do everything I can to fix it, because it's not on purpose. And I think people can see that if I've made some error, but I sure try to do that in advance. I try to fix things, try to read it and do everything I can in advance of that vote. But I do want to say that somebody had said at Conduit, well, they like you. And aside of Paul Harrell, I said, well, they won't like me if I don't vote conservatively. I can promise you that the day that I move down to number 11, and when that gap gets way away and we're not tied at the top of those, where that voting gap is, and I'm no longer voting as a Republican, as a platform, and I'm voting more like that Democrat or not as a conservative, I can promise you, they're gonna tear me up, and they don't care if I'm sitting in the room.
We'll still like you, you
Well-
just might not like us.
No, that's right. That's the point. Isn't that what they're saying? Right now, they say, oh, but they like you. I said, that's not the point. It doesn't matter if I'm sitting in that room. You know, when you guys go out and you do your program and they're talking about that voting, you know, when you first did your grading this past year, I'm sitting in the room, and I have no problem sitting in the room. But they're going to talk about certain scoring, and what if I voted different? I'm still going to be sitting in that room, because out of however many bills you grade, I might not vote exactly like you wanted me to vote when you sent out your, hey, we hope you'll vote opposite. I might not agree with you. But if there's 50 bills graded and I don't agree with you on one or two, I'm still going to be at the top of that list on my scorecard. Because why? Because I vote conservative all the time. I just may not agree on one or two bills with you. It's like you were saying, you're going to be grading a lot more bills than you should be. You should be grading a lot more. There's a whole lot more that are conservative than 6 that are economical. You should be grading more than 6 bills, AFP, but that was not you. And that was someone else. And we should have more than 6 bills that are important to us in an organization. And you will have, and I believe that about you, and I love what the things you had to say. And we're thankful that you're here. And so, the Tax Foundation, your book here, I have that book. And I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I wanted to meet you tonight, actually personally, not just see some blurbs once in a while about what you do. That's why I drove all the way from Northeast Arkansas to hear this panel tonight. I thank you for what you're doing, and David, always your group for what you do. Thank you all.
I want to, this is the last question. Thank you for your comments. And last question, combine it with, actually it's 2 questions, then I want you to have a couple of minutes each to share, you know, what's going on going forward. But the conservative movement over the last 3, 4, 5 years, what do you think about it? What's been going on there in the state of Arkansas, and how best can this group engage with your perspective of the movement and the direction that you have your group going? Talk about that just briefly because of time, and then how we can engage with you. Sorry, Joe, you got the mic.
The conservative movement is not void of ideas or essential agreement on what needs to happen. There's not a big mystery about what needs to happen. What we have is a lack of will. Now that could be part of the legislators or people in office, and it could be part of the citizens that will not support the cuts. You know, don't cut my thing. I want government cut, but not my deal. You know, we're all guilty of that to some extent. So these people have a very difficult job, and it's so much easier to describe what they would like to see happen and then vote what keeps them in office than it is to tell you, repeat to you, regurgitate to you what the conservative ideas are, and then go do them tenaciously. Because they want to get along, they want to stay elected, they want to have friends. You know, who wants to be the outcast? You know, and stick with conservative ideas down the line, no compromise. Compromise is what got us here in this $20 trillion debt. That's what got us here. There's a time for compromise, there's time not for compromise, and we do it way too much. Now, the conservative movement, like I said, to repeat, there is no lack of ideas. We know what conservative ideas are, and so do they. It's the will. And find the people that have the will, support them, go hold signs for them, make phone calls for them, and get them elected. And if they don't have the will, find somebody that does.
Well, I will say that I believe that there's a lot of near apathy currently because we worked really hard for 2 or 3, 4 years, 5 years. We can see things just, you know, success is just a snap away, and then suddenly it seems more, you know, worse than ever. But we do see things changing on the national level. It's so depressing to watch the news on a national level. But I do believe that Arkansas will have to get there and start peeling back, as I said, you know, studying where the money's going. But right now, things can change quickly. You know, we had said it looks like another 2-year cycle before we'll really be able to make a difference, but suddenly there's 3 senators missing out of 35. That's a huge opportunity. Were we ready for that? We didn't have a candidate in every district. So I would think if we're going to have any success for everything you guys have worked on the last few years, you're going to go to Russellville tomorrow. See us after this and say, where do we plug in? Because there's an opportunity we did not expect, and the success is just waiting to help Linda and her votes. And guys, this is doable, and once you do that, then it'll feed on itself, and you'll have energy again to do what you've been working hard to do.
AFP will always be in the business of policy and passing good conservative policy. But policy follows culture. So if you see a policy that's taking place and being voted for, be it pro-conservative or not leaning conservative, like many of the policies we can point to that's happened in our state, this all happens is because the culture allows it. We can work and work and work as a small group like this, and we can get some policy wins. But those policy wins are only as good as the next legislature that comes in. What we are doing at AFP is attempting to take a long game view and get involved in actually what I would call the culture war, of trying to change the hearts and the minds of individuals who are not in this room, who would probably not think to ever show up into this room. In Arkansas, just on our voter rolls, these are registered voters, there's almost 450,000 millennials on the voter rolls in Arkansas. This is a demographic that has to be reached with conservative ideas. In AFP, we have a Generation Opportunity that is specifically designed to develop messaging and methods in which to get conservative ideas in front of the younger generation. And we are bringing them and engaging them in this state. There are issues such as school choice that actually millennial parents are very involved in. It's actually a gateway issue to other conservative principles, because once they recognize school choice is an economic, free market-based idea, it's rooted in that, well, wow, if it works for education, could it not also work for the economy at large?
Healthcare.
Yeah, healthcare even. So it's a gateway issue. We currently have lists pulled of those voters in Arkansas, and we need help in moving the undecided persuasion universe of people into the highly aligned. We're trying to find those people because there's a couple things we can do. One is we have our Grassroots Leadership Academy that not only just trains you on how to be activists, but can also train and educate on insight to actions, teaching why why school choice is an important issue and why you should be allowed to use it in your state. We're going to cast a broad net in trying to get some of those that are highly aligned with us, and they they think they're really good. They think this is a great concept. Yeah, school choice is cool. I'm aligned with that. But also trying to not just educate them and give them good facts and good ammunition to support what they believe, but reach into the persuasion and move some of those more our direction. They're just undecided about it. They don't know. So we're putting some programs together to be brought into the state. So while we're also doing the C4 activist level, we will also be supporting that with trying to change the culture in Arkansas through education efforts. That's the long game, and that's what we're trying to work on.
I would say we're much more in kind of the long game campaign as well. I think that's what our strength is, so we play that. And also, I'm just kind of dumb when it comes to politics. So, last year we put this book out right before the session last year, and we thought we had a lot of legislators that liked it, and then all of a sudden the tax committee goes to the Democrats, and then all of a sudden it became very apparent that there was only the one tax bill put up. It was one that the governor liked, and that was going to be it this year. They said, hey, we'll do it next year. We can always just do it next year. And so I'm just always kind of, well, I'm fine with the long play. I'm always confused by why, if you have the movement for it now, why not just do it now? Why wait 2 years? So I just am dumb on that. I don't understand that. I know there's a lot going on behind the scenes and so on, but why are we waiting 2 years? We don't have any new information about why Arkansas
I think
tax
they
system
call
is
that
bad.
marble fever.
But,
Marble fever takes over.
Sure, but, so that's, you know, we always like to try to help with the here and now when we can, but really we're just trying to put good ideas out there, and whenever they get picked up, we're happy, but we hope it's not too late at some point.
All right. Well, thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Brenda. Joe. Appreciate you guys. Let's give them a hand. With that, I will turn it over to Jim to bring closure to the night. But thank you so much for coming and sharing, and we'll hang out and we'll have meet and greet and some food on the side.
A couple of things, guys. One of the things we talked about this several times, and this is an interesting little tidbit for you guys. The city of Conway, the county of Faulkner, and the schools, talking about the schools here, we've talked about this several times, but the Conway city school system, their budget is equal to the cost of the Faulkner County and the city of Conway budget. It is higher than both of those. And I dare say that anybody in this room understands the process of how a few people on a school board can raise your millage increases, and a few people voted in, and therefore you're funding a public school system that you really don't even realize. Okay? So while we need to get involved in the state level and the local level, pay attention to the school board, and also the city council elections, what's happening here. I think a lot of you guys are well aware that there was a local initiative for the city of Conway. They passed a sales tax increase. The city of Greenbrier right now is going through the same process. And I heard somebody made a comment earlier about Maumelle, and it's 2.5%.
We're doing 2 half-cent.
2 half-cent sales, so a full cent sales tax. So everybody's on this bandwagon about trying to increase the sales taxes. So to the point of trying to get people involved in pushing back, we need, we're going to need volunteers to help Joe here and Brenda and Russell. So if you've got the time available, let's make ourselves available and try to help these guys push back and try to help these guys get some conservative candidates elected, because Russell's not that far. I'm doing business in Russell, so let's help them. Okay. Anyway, thanks for coming out tonight. Say hello to everybody. Apologies, Ms. Hill. Would you like to say a word or two to anybody since you're here?
I just wanted to say hello to everybody. I just hadn't seen y'all. I wanted to come here, AFP, meet you, see Joe and Brenda, meet y'all as well. Glad to see you.
Now French has got a Democrat opponent.
He's got 3 Democrats.
3 Democrats.
3 Democrats are running in the primary, and there's an independent. Absolutely.
Be a challenge for a lesser man.
There is the plus